Hi, everybody. I'm usually very excited to record these shows, but I'm more excited than ever today because I know this woman personally, but from a connection that may surprise you as we go along. This is a woman who changed my life, and you will hear why throughout the show. We are here to talk principally about angels, and we're going to find out why that's such a popular topic. But we're with a woman who started the whole angel craze, if I could call it that. And you'll hear more about that as well. Let me not dally anymore at all. Let me introduce to you a guest who I am beyond honored to interview, and that is Sophy Burnham. Sophy, welcome to the show.
Suzanne, it's a great honor to be here and to see you. My God, you look gorgeous. I'm so happy. We haven't seen each other in a long time.
Well, I want to tell people how we initially met as we get into this, but I want to say publicly, I started to tell you before we pressed record, but I wanted to tell everybody that as I was reviewing two of your books last night, getting ready for today, I was filled with such a sense of honor and reverence, not just for your work, but for you. You have so much wisdom to share with the world, and yet you don't come across as the wise woman, even though you have a lightness, a brightness, a little bit of sassiness to you that I know will come across. So let me just tell people, you wrote a book that became a bestseller, and I know it surprised you, and that is A Book of Angels. Why do you think it became such a bestseller and started the angel craze back in 1990?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I did not write it for publication. I wrote it because I needed to understand something. I needed to understand all of these strange, I can use the word miraculous, incidences and coincidences and events that had happened to my life, which included an angel saving my life dramatically, but it was much more than that. I mean, the angel saving my life, I did what anybody would do. I said, oh, well, that didn't happen.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that later, so stick with us because we always love the stories on this show. But
then I came to a point in my life where I could not ignore these things any longer, and I began to set down all of the stories just to try to lay them out, and then I would have some understanding of what it was about. And when it was finished, I thought, this book is really good, and I couldn't sell it.
Oh, really?
About 5 years passed. I had an agent. I don't think he ever sent the book out, ever. I sent it at one point to Edgar Casey's publishing house. They turned it down.
No.
And then I went up to the National Cathedral. Here's a story where they have, in Washington, D.C., this is, where they had at that time a chapel open 24 hours a day. And I did not kneel down and pray. I put myself out flat on the stone floor, weeping and praying and offering myself to God and saying that I had worked with all my mind and heart and soul and strength, not only for this book, but for a few others that all unpublished. And that when I went home, when I died and went home, I would have to say that I'd failed. Oh. And at that moment, while I'm there pouring out my heart and weeping uncontrollably, and I'm a grown woman, mind you, I'm in my 40s then, there are these little footsteps I hear coming in, and I get up and I brush away my tears and I pretend that everything is all right, the way we do. And this lovely woman came in, and I can tell you she was not an angel because I saw her afterwards as a human being, but she was certainly being directed by angels because she told me this is now late at night, 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, that she woke up in the night and had a terrific urge to come down and be at the chapel. And we went into conversation, and she was an artist, and she told me that all we can do is to do the work with all our heart and mind and soul and strength. And the outcome of it is not our responsibility. That's entirely up to God. And I went away greatly comforted and decided, oh, okay, I don't have to do this anymore. I can get a job like normal people. I discovered I was totally unemployable. But at that moment, when I gave up, everything fell into place, and almost immediately I had a new agent, and she said, I can sell this book. The publisher did not expect to sell very many copies. They printed 5,000 copies, but no one in the publishing house could stop working on it. It was quite remarkable. The whole thing was guided, I do believe, because they all said, we have a lot of work, but I can't stop working on this book.
Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely.
Really beautiful. And when the book came out, there was no publicity. They thought they would sell 5,000 copies to libraries and make up their investment. And instead, people found it in bookshelves where it fell off the shelf at their feet, they said many times. And they would buy 10 and 12 copies and buy them for their friends who would buy 10 and 12 copies. And it became not only a bestseller, but a phenomenon.
A phenomenon, absolutely. 25 languages it was translated into.
And 26, I can say now, because it's recently into Chinese.
Oh, outstanding. But it was, you had articles published in all the big name magazines, and it literally started the whole angel craze. And
it did.
Yeah.
And they sent me on a tour after it became clear that they could not keep it in print. And I went on a tour of the whole country on television and radio. And that, I have to tell you, was hell. Never asked to be a celebrity. It's perfectly horrible. Perfectly horrible.
In what way? Stressful, tiring?
Oh, it's lonely. You don't even know where you are. Did you just say this yesterday? Yes, you did. I'm repeating myself. And you're lonely and you're tired and you want to go home and be alone. You don't want to. I mean, it's a big deal to present yourself. And on the radio or the television shows, they haven't read the book. They don't know what they're talking about.
But those who did read it were sharing it, and no wonder, because it just draws you in. And I love that I have an edition, the second edition, and there's the, the updated preface and the old preface, and you talk about how you've changed, and we'll talk about that. But one thing that struck me is when you said that you were amazed and ashamed at being called the angel lady, and ashamed at how people had commercialized angels. I'd love if you talk about that.
Yes, that's really true. All these little angel stores broke up. They've stopped now mostly, but they were selling angel bric-a-brac and towels and T-shirts. It was everywhere. And I felt that it diminished and trivialized something that to me was sacred and holy and beyond description beautiful, something beyond our comprehension on this physical plane. And I was ashamed in that way. And I was ashamed also because in my upbringing, I'm considerably older than you, but in those days, a young girl, a woman, might be in the newspaper for birth, marriage, and death, and that was it. We were not supposed to claim our power the way women can now, and why I'm so happy to see that we are doing. I just, yes.
But why? I mean, angels, the angels weren't ashamed. This was all part of a plan to popularize them more, to bring them into our awareness. Why do you feel they waited so long? Why did they suddenly burst into the popular realm?
God's timing is perfect. And if it had come out in 1985, when I wanted it to come out, people would not have been ready for it. There's a moment, and God's timing is always, I say God as if I knew what God was, but of course I don't.
You, a spiritual director, I mean, you are trained as a spiritual director. We all have our own concept of God, but all one has to do is read your books and you know.
I know, but it's, let me call it the divine or fate or this spiritual has plans, and it was the right timing. And it has continued to be ever since. It was a period earlier of total secularist humanism, which I completely agree with also. But suddenly this burst of spirituality, of opening up, and people could see in their hearts the goodness of it all. It was God's timing.
God's timing. And so we're going to go off the topic of angels for just a minute so I can tell people how you changed my life and the divine timing of that. And there's a detail that you probably don't know, and there's going to be something that surprises anybody who's read my book, Messages of Hope. And that is that you and I met. Do you remember how we met?
I do. We were met at Anne Gehmann's workshop.
That's right. Anne Giesemann is the medium who I featured in my book, The Priest and the Medium. And I was looking for someone to help bring my stepdaughter, Susan, through. I had hope that she existed after she passed, but I was not sure. So I tried to get a reading with Anne Giesemann, and she wasn't giving readings, but she had a workshop, and you were in that workshop.
And we sat next to each other.
We did. But I don't know if you remember this moment when Anne Giesemann said, someone is going to write my biography, and I don't know who it's going to be. People have been trying for years. And I remember you raised your hand and you said, I'll write it. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember.
And I remember thinking, God, I would love to be the person who writes her biography, but look, sitting beside me is a New York Times best-selling author. Who am I to think I could write Anne Giesmann's biography? Well, that was a whole spirit thing. That was a setup so that I would meet Anne and that would unfold. But it was yours and my connection in that class that showed me you could see spirits. I remember going to you after class and saying, are you a medium? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but I do remember giving you a reading in that class.
It wasn't in the class.
I don't remember what came through, but I remember being astonished at how much I knew.
Well, this is the life-changing part. So if you don't remember it correctly, it's because it was just probably another reading for you. But everybody, Sophy Burnham is the medium who brought Susan through to me for the first time with Ty in your apartment in Washington, D.C. I changed your name in the book. I don't know why I was guided at the time to change it, but we did an exercise in the class with Anne, and you were paired up with another woman, and you said, oh, her aunt in spirit was here, and you brought through all these details, and I thought, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who doesn't know me, doesn't know my last name, can't Google me. I need a reading with her. And you agreed to do a reading. And Ty and I came to your apartment in Washington. And that's where you brought through our Susan and changed our life by saying, and she's bringing with her this little baby boy who she doesn't know, knows that you don't know, and she wants to introduce him to you. And Susan had been pregnant with a baby boy. But you also saw angels behind me. And at the time, I thought that was ridiculous because I didn't believe in angels. And I couldn't process everything you told me except to say that I could not deny the evidence you gave me about Susan. Hearing your voice talking now on this podcast is kind of jarring to me because I've listened to that recording so many times and your voice is exactly the same. So you're the one who turned my worldview on its end by showing me Susan is right here in the room with us. And here we are today.
Story, Susan, of seeing your daughter and how it happened?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
May I tell the story of how I saw your daughter?
I would love that. Yeah.
From my point of view.
Yeah.
Susan came to me, called me, and she said, I'd like a reading. May I bring my husband?
Oh, Suzanne, yes, me, I did. Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, but he can go into the other room while you have your reading. And if he wants his reading, he can have an individual one. But the two of you together will interfere. The energies of both will interfere. So you said, well, I don't know if he wants to come anyway. Anyway, you came and he came also. And I put him into the other room and we settled down and I started the reading with seeing the angels. And then I felt, oh, there's a spirit that wants to talk, but wait, I'm not ready yet. I'm still talking. Wait a minute, wait a minute. And then finally I said to you, there's a spirit here who wants to talk to you. And she keeps saying, mother, mother. And you said, I don't have any children. I said, well, that's not my problem. She's calling you her mother. And you said, what's she wear? And I said, she's wearing some really ugly brown uniform, pants, and big boots. And
big boots. Yeah, Marine Corps.
And there's a little baby with her about knee high. And you said, let me get my husband. And he came in and sat, and this spirit flew into his arms and threw her arms around his neck. Do you remember this?
I'll never forget it.
Oh, we were all three of us in tears. And she stayed in his lap with her arms around him until it was time for her to go. And I can remember saying, you have to hurry and say what you need to say. They can't stay very long. And she has to go back now. And then she went back, and then we gave you a reading.
No, that was the whole goal. You had no idea how desperate we were for validation, and that there were so many more things than what you just shared. Do you remember sitting there on your 7th floor apartment, the window open only this much, and this big, heavy potted plant fell off the coffee table and shattered on the floor?
I'd forgotten that, but you remind me, I do remember now.
And you didn't miss a beat. You were so focused on Susan, and Ty and I just, we kind of thought, how did that just happen? And we went on with the reading. You just thought, oh, we'll clean that up later. But plants don't just fall on the floor by themselves. The wind was not blowing. It was a lovely, lovely experience. But at that time, I had no idea that you were this literally world famous author, and it's not just the Book of Angels. I haven't really shared your biography, but anybody look up Sophy Burnham on Wikipedia. She has a tremendous resume that's on there that's so impressive. I mean, you didn't, when you say you hadn't published anything, Sophy, you had quite a lot of writing to your credit at that point and since.
I did, but I'd written 6 books in 8 years and I couldn't get any of them published. And I didn't want to write what anybody wanted me to write. And I was just impelled to write the stuff nobody wanted. And then later they all came out in God's times, like sitting there like trains in the station, ready to roll. And it's been great.
Yeah. So
I'm working on a book now about what it's like to be old.
Oh, didn't that come out in the reading I did for you, that you had more books than you? Everybody, it's so funny because the tables were turned.
I don't believe it.
You reached out to me and said, may I have a reading? And I thought, oh my goodness, look at the cycle of life here. But that came out, remember?
I do. And you told me that and I didn't believe you.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, before we go too far into some of your other books and the deeper meaning here, will you share with us the story that I just read again last night from your book, of that moment that caused you to think maybe angels are real before you dismissed it?
Okay, I'm a young woman. I have a baby, so I think I'm 28 or 29 at the time. I do not believe in God because I am married to a profoundly religious atheist. And I am trying desperately to keep up with him. I'm not doing very well because I can't stop praying, but I'm trying. And we go skiing in Val d'Isère in France with some friends of mine. Val d'Isère is in the high Alps above the tree line. And I'm a really good skier. And David was a good skier too. We both really loved skiing. And the snow is packed hard. In Val d'Isère, they do not have ski patrol who scan the slopes afterwards to find people who've been lost or fallen down. So you'd better stay on the piste, on the track. Don't go off the track because you'll fall off a cliff or you'll start an avalanche. So we're skiing and David is ahead of me and he stops on a kind of slope where it's going to turn off to the right and go around a corner. And I'm coming down the hill toward him really fast and I put my skis together to stop. And it's hard. The snow is so hard, it doesn't, my skis don't even grip and I go right past him and down. And then the next thing I know, I'm falling with my skis over my head, looking at the sky. I'm falling head first and I'm going really fast on snow that is like ball bearings. It's so hard. And I can't seem to pull my skis around and stop myself. And at a certain moment, I say, it doesn't matter. I'll hit a tree or a rock, forgetting totally there are no trees around, but only rocks. And it doesn't matter because at that moment, my heart leapt out of my body and I thought, home, because between my skis looking at the sky, I see this colors we don't even have words for. It's not only yellow and blue and pink and green, but shades I've never seen before. And it is absolutely staggeringly beautiful. And as I say, I think home, although I don't know what home means, mind you, it's just my heart's word. And at that moment, I stopped. And the reason I've stopped is because up above David, standing on the hill watching me fall, a skier all in black comes tearing past him down the hill. I'm falling this way. He goes around me, stops, and my head and shoulders bump into his legs. I might add that afterwards, I did not have a stiff neck. The two of us did not fall down together at the speed that I'm falling. He should have at least jumped a little. The landing against him was as soft as putting a baby in a crib.
Oh.
And so I stood up and I looked in his eyes, and his eyes are black, dark, deep, deep brown like yours, Suzanne. And pools of love. I have never had anyone in my life look at me with eyes like that. In an instant, I fell in love. And so I said, merci, monsieur. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to hear him speak. But he did not speak. He did not do anything. He turned and he started herumboning up the hill, and past David, who reached out to say, hey, that was interesting. Great, great. And he shot off down the hill to the right, actually, David's right. And during this time, I'm coming up after him with herringboning after him, and I'm a strong skier, and it was like Mickey Mouse following the 7-league giant. It was so powerful. And when I got up, David said, are you okay? Are you okay? I'll talk to you later, I said, and I shot off after this man. And then you go around the corner and the whole valley opens up, these distances that you have in the Alps. And way, way, way down at the bottom of the valley is the little town of Tignes. And people that are the size of very small black ants and nothing else. Not a single person anywhere to be seen. And certainly no one skiing in a black ski suit at a time when all the skiers are skiing in bright colors. And I'm making these long passes thinking maybe he's behind a furrow or something, some ridge. But he had gone, he just completely vanished in an impossible way. And then I looked over to my left and I realized I had fallen on the top of a slope that ended in a cliff straight down with these huge boulders at the bottom. And a little bit further on, I would have fallen off that cliff and been killed on the boulders. So I spent the next week looking for this man. I mean, of course, my thought was something special happened there. The sky, the light, my heart leaping out of my body. I've never forgotten that. His eyes, the love that poured out. My mother said that was your guardian angel, but I dismissed it because I was not prepared to do what accepting it would require of me. I was a wife and the mother of a little girl. I could not go and found hospitals and start charitable organizations. I'm just not that person. And why me came up a lot. It was only many years later, after seeing some ghosts and learning a great deal more, that the words "why not me" became more proper.
And I know a few people just went, did she just say seeing some ghosts? So yes, this opened up new realities for you, huh?
It completely opened up what is a reality that we do not see. Most of the time, it's all around us. Everything, Suzanne, is shining with this spiritual light. And now that I've reached this incredible age in my 80s, I see it most of the time. Most of the time, if it is one of the great gifts that I have managed to live long enough to be able to find it.
You are a gift. Your writing inspired me so much that after I read A Book of Angels, initially after our reading, I went on to read more of your books that talk about deep spirituality. And even in the Book of Angels, you address the big questions that so many of us want to know. And I would love for you to address this question of why were you, or why are certain other people saved from accidents when there are many people who watch this program And they say, why wasn't my child? Why wasn't my partner saved by an angel?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
The big question. Well, one thing that I have truly come to believe. Let me get a sip of water. One thing that I have truly come to believe is that we do not die. There is no death. There's a passage from one form into another form. And the people that we called died are still there with us in another form, invisibly. And to that extent, it doesn't matter. I think, I can't remember who it was who said, as soon as you come to terms with life, you know how to, with death, you know how to live. Once you understand that death is our friend, first, everything becomes more precious in this life because we know how temporary it is. And secondly, knowing how temporary it is and how we'll see it on the other side also.
And as you say that,
it's something crazy. I know there are people out there who do not believe at all that anything happens after you die, but I have seen so many spirits. I have had so many strangers and loved ones come back and talk. How can I not share what I know?
Yeah. And but as you said, once you come to terms with death, it doesn't matter. Those who are grieving will say, well, it matters to me. I want them back. Would you address that?
I will say that is an expression of your love. Grief is nothing but love. And it doesn't have to be pleasant. But if you take your grief and you turn it around and say, this is me loving, it changes the pain. It is no longer as painful. It's different. Just as loving is different from wanting. There's so much to say about this. Many times we say, my prayers are not answered. I want, I lack, I need. And we get trapped in the want and lack and need. And we're begging and needing and wanting and lacking. And we can't step back enough to have the gift given to us. So one day I was communing with my spirits or guides or angels. And I asked a question and the answer came, pray. And I thought and asked, why should I pray? You know what I want. What's the point? And the answer came to me, seemed like a painting, Suzanne, where you see it all at once, and then it divided into 3 parts. And the first part was so that we will know what you want in order that we may bring you what you need. Making that distinction between want and need. And the second thing was, because when you pray, you might be on your knees for 15 minutes, but for 15 seconds in that time, you will let go and create a window that we can dive through to bring you the desire of your heart. This idea that you have to let go. Okay, I've told you what I want now. Let go and let God. I'm open to whatever comes. But the third thing I would never have thought of in a million years. Those 2 I might have made up, but not the third. And the third was, because we need the energy of your thought and prayer in order for us to do our work. And I had never at that time thought that We are in relationship and they need us to do their work. They are working for us. We don't work for the angels. Being a human is really, really hard. That's why we have angels to help us.
Yeah. I had just read that concept recently, and it was in an older book, probably 60 years old, if not older. And they called it the law of complementarity, that you must give out your energy to receive the higher energy. And that's exactly that third step that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But we also have to let go of want and lack, which acts like the bow wave of a motorboat as it's coming into the dock. You know, you've got to cut the motor back so it can drift to the dock. Otherwise, the bow wave will sweep the boat off to the side. And that's what happens when we're praying constantly from lack. We're veered off. We can't get to the dock.
Beautiful analogy. It's a little frightening to me because I'm going to be docking my boat 2 days from now. So you just reminded me, cut the throttle back. Yeah. I always pray as I dock the boat, angels guide me, you take over the throttle. So you were talking about communing with your spirits. What is your practice like? Is that a regular thing or just throughout the day? How do you commune?
It used to be a very formal thing where I would find myself in a difficult place or confused, and I would sit at my desk and I would begin, I'll tell you exactly how I would do it, what I call automatic writing. I would begin by an invocation. God, angels, guides, spirits, come talk to me. I need you. And then I pause and I make little V's with my pencil on the paper, just sort of waiting. And then my hand will write, we are here, or something like that. And then I ask my question, writing it out. And then they answer, writing it out, often in a slightly different hand, often with a knowledge that precludes words. I remember once asking, how do I know I'm not making this up? How do I know it's not my imagination? At which point they went away. And instantly I felt totally different. I mean, it was like having a mantle. And then, oh, I'm naked.
Almost bereft, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Today, I don't have to do that. I don't have to write it out formally any longer. I think, and I have an answer. And I have come to trust my answers and my intuition. And that takes a little practice. You make mistakes at first, and the mistakes are so that you'll learn what it feels like when you're not listening. And pretty soon, you don't have to be guided with cattle prods down the road. You can be guided with silken reins. And you just listen.
You know, I was stunned when you say about guided and cattle prods. I was stunned reading your biography on Wikipedia that you attended a girls' military and equestrian boarding school. There's the horse reference, with strict discipline. That just a girls' military school way back when.
Rifles on the drill field.
And for your commencement ceremony, you had the Joint Chiefs of Staff review your military drill. Oh my goodness!
I know.
Yeah,
it was one of my other lifetimes.
Yes. And yet, you say in your book these days, and you said it here, you see angels and spirits naturally. Did you do anything to develop that, or did it unfold as a result of your belief opening? What do you attribute that?
Oh, Suzanne, my whole life has been spent searching for this. That girls' military school, I was miserably unhappy because bells rang every hour to tell you to wake up or eat or go to study hall or go to bed. Every hour was marked with bells, and I could never find myself alone enough to make contact, although I didn't as a child know that I was doing it. But then I wasn't looking for it at all. Ghosts came. My mother died. Ghost came. I came to believe. It wasn't difficult to understand. But then there was a point about midway through my life, and I was in my 40s, and my marriage was breaking up, and I was on a deep spiritual search. I can remember looking in the mirror and thinking, I have everything. We have this beautiful house in Georgetown. I have 2 healthy, beautiful daughters. My husband is a wonderful man. I have clothes, I have shelter, I have food. Is this all? Is this all? It's not enough. And even as I was thinking that in the mirror, I can remember seeing a shadow on the corner of my eye and looking, and there was no one there. And I think that's what began my spiritual search. I wasn't finding it in church, and I wasn't finding it in the physical world, what I was looking for. I ended up getting an Indian guru. I did Buddhist meditation for a while, and then Hindu meditation, and came to believe, strangely, that I really understood what Jesus was talking about. But it's not taught to us in church what he was talking about. And then I had certain mystical revelations. They changed me cellularly.
Would you ask to be guided to share just one of those that would help anybody who's listening? One of your mystical revelations, what just guided you even deeper onto this path?
I was in a period of utter misery in my life, beginning with that standing in front of the mirror. And I began, a long period, let's say 5 or 6 or 8 years. And toward the end of this, I was praying and fasting and meditating and searching and reading and praying, if there is a God, show me, show me. It's not enough to read about it. I'm too dumb for that. I want to see it. And then I was sent on an assignment to Peru and Costa Rica to write an article, and not about Peru or Costa Rica, but to write, that was part of writing about the article. And I went to Machu Picchu, and there I knew something was going to happen in Machu Picchu. I didn't know what, but I knew that I was being guided there and that it would be important. And indeed, when I got there, it was wonderful, but I asked the tour guide, I said, I need to go away and be alone now for a while. Where do I go? He said, go up onto the terraces up there and you can find a place to meditate. He even used the word. I didn't say I wanted to meditate. And I sat down to meditate, and in a flash, I was in the midst of a profound mystical experience. And when I came out of it, 45 minutes had passed, and I had seen not God, but the waving of the grasses and the passing of the garment of God. And after that, I was cellularly changed. I could see light streaming off the palms of my hands. I could see light surrounding other people as I do now, as we're all of us shining with light. And not only us, but trees and grass and dogs, every living sentient thing. And trees, by the way, are sentient. and we're all surrounded by our spiritual essence. And that essence is love. And then I came home and my marriage broke up, and I spent many years in anguish and tears and trying to accommodate it. It's not something I would wish on anybody. It's much better to have a long, gradual.
But so this is what's interesting. You tell this story, and I'm feeling very sure that many people listening thought, oh, so instantly your life became joyous. And
oh, no, absolutely not. This is part of what I was writing about in The Ecstatic Journey.
This is her book that I also read after the Book of Angels, The Ecstatic Journey. It's outstanding and deep.
Mysticism and what happens to you when you have an experience and what happens to you afterwards. And it is not all happiness and joy and pleasure. There's an unfoldment as you try to fold up the sheets of life again and make them make sense. And oh, I can't tell you how many tears I wept because I couldn't be in that space also.
And yet at the same time, that's your journey, because there are people who are transformed and are all joyous. So what you are showing us is that each journey is unique. Yet that was such a turning point for you.
Each one is different, and it's a long lifetime journey. And I believe that's why we're here. I believe that we agree to come down to a physical form, and we want to do it in order to have the extraordinary, exquisite experience of having hands to touch with and lips to kiss with, arms to embrace with. We want the experience of holding a child or of having a mother or father, of what it is to have a want, because humans are all about wanting.
And maybe even what it is to grieve, right?
Wanting.
And what it is to grieve, Sophie, also even that.
Grieve, yes, to have these emotions. And so where we say, oh yeah, that sounds great, I can do that. And then we come down and immediately the memory of what came before is wiped out. And we're saying, whoa, I didn't mean this. Yeah, I said I would come be homeless. I didn't know it was going to hurt. And I think the angels envy us, our physical form, this gift of being alive in a body for a very, very short time. It's over in the flack of an, just gone. And then you're back to being in the spiritual dimension, which has its own great beauty, but you don't have a physical form. You can't embrace with your hands and arms.
That's beautiful. A lot of answers there for people who are seeking now. You're in your 80s, your late 80s.
I'm 86. I'll be 87 in another few weeks.
Yeah, you must have a birthday right around Ty's. What?
Ride my horse.
You still ride your horse, huh?
Still ride my horse
and write books, and
yeah, and I love every minute of living. I'm not ready to go yet.
Yeah.
But when I do, it'll be okay.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self or your 40-year-old self?
Oh, what a wonderful thing. I would tell my 40-year-old self, don't worry, it gets better.
Oh, good, everybody.
I would tell my 20-year-old self, try as hard as you can to see with invisible eyes what is the reality and to trust. And that means to trust that the universe is on your side and that it wants more and better for you than you can possibly imagine. And if all you have to do is listen to it. So much of the time we get information and we say, oh, that can't be true, and we pass it away. That's what I would say to my 20-year-old. And I would say, love every minute of it, because you're not going to be 20 again. And this is a time for exploring and discovering who you are. Maybe that's all that life is. I say that it's about, maybe it's really only about answering those questions. Who am I? Why am I here?
Well,
And
it's also
that changes with each decade. Of course it does. It changes with each decade because each decade has a different path, a different meaning, a different.
I just saw a book for you. Another one. Why don't you write for us those different decades?
Right, the different decades.
Yeah, what the path is and how it twists and turns. You wrote in your book a line that I wrote down because it's so pertinent in every decade. You wrote about the conflicts that were going on 30 some years ago when you wrote the Book of Angels, and yet it's as pertinent today. You said it's sometimes a journey of anguish, this life, when the laws of God and nations conflict as they will. Would you just expand on that? The laws of God versus the laws of nations, and that it's kind of the way it is.
One of the things that is very clear and is that angels can do anything. They can change the laws of physics, but the one thing that they cannot do is to interfere with our free will. We have free will. We have free will to choose at every moment which path we're going to take. Is it a path of violence or is it a path of harmony? And the angel cannot stop the murderer's hand from driving that knife in. He can bring the ambulance, warm comfort, keep the victim alive. But the murderer has free will to murder. The nation has free will to make war and send its young boys and girls off to fight for words that seem to have meaning like honor, patriotism, nationalism, but which probably really mean oil, gas, gold, lithium, minerals, me, money.
But if the angels can't interfere with our free will, what happens when we're already blinded to who we really are and we're making our choices from ignorance? That's part of the whole setup, isn't it?
It's the story that we have, isn't it? I'm reading Herodotus at the moment, the Tales of Herodotus.
Little light reading before bedtime.
I like reading before bedtime. Well, he's really entertaining. It is really good reading. And what it's all about is emperors making war on neighbors for no reason at all, except, oh, he's got some stuff. Let's go get his stuff. Plunder. It's not, there's no reason for it. Let's go to war. The way the Vikings would get through the winter and springtime would come and they'd say, hey, let's go have some fun. We'll row from Norway down to England or Denmark and go plunder. And then they'd go have a wonderful time killing, including animals, oxen and cattle. And
so what are the angels? What are
bringing
the angels thinking? What are the angels thinking? I love throwing these answers out to the angel lady here.
Watching with great compassion and love. I remember in my future life progression having this sense of, oh, humans, they're so dear. They're so adorable with their worrying about their little troubles, and they have such short-term memories. They can't keep anything in their minds for more than a nanosecond. And then they're lashing out. And my heart just opening up. They're so adorable. That's what the angels are thinking. Let them fight.
Are you able to shift your viewpoint from human angst to the angels' viewpoint today?
Yeah, but it shifts back and forth because I also look at what's happening in the Middle East, and I am as anguished as anyone. It is intolerable. And yes, there's cause on all sides. And what do they do but just kill each other with it? It's so stupid. It is so stupid. But that's what they did also in 5000 BC. And that's what we will be doing in 5000 AD. Because this is the human condition.
This is the point. And it's what you shared here and what the Awaken Way teaching is all about, that we are not only human. That's the relief valve right there. The awareness that this is just a sidebar in eternity.
And we are making huge progress. If you look back in history at the way people treated each other in Herodotus' time, or in the Middle Ages in 1200, and that's really only 800 years ago, or bring it forward to the 1700s, and how we treat ourselves now, what we consider right and just now. There is huge, huge spiritual awakening.
This is the thing that we don't see because we just focus on what's here and now, but it's definitely, my guide said we've moved from the dark ages to the dim ages, and that's an improvement. Little tongue in cheek, but we do need a little humor sometimes, or we would lose hope.
Oh, absolutely. And you have only to read a little bit of history to understand how far we've come. We are so, the whole world is upset about a war in Ukraine and a war in Gaza. Imagine that. That has never happened in the history of the world before. Wait a minute, we got to stop this. This is not right, people are saying. And the war in Sudan. The human heart knows how we're supposed to be. And then the brain gets in the way, and wants and needs and desires and lust and greed and fear. Fear is huge.
Is this why we're given angels? Is this why the angels are here?
I say it again.
Is this why we're given angels, to help us through these times?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. We have angels that came with us when we're born and will continue with us through our whole life. Because, as I said, it's really hard to be a human being. And look at the children of today. They're so wise. They're already beyond anything that I've had a lifetime to learn, and my grandchildren already know it. We're becoming a better humanity.
Absolutely.
I really am very optimistic about that.
So let's conclude this with you please addressing you were ashamed and embarrassed about starting the Angel Craze. How do you feel about it now?
Well, now it has very little to do with me. It's been taken over by other people. And I'm thrilled by that. By you, for example, piggybacking on what I started, but starting something even bigger. How wonderful.
Well, that's the evolution of the whole species, right? It's ripples. You sent the ripples out, but now the angels.
I don't have to be in the forefront. I don't have to be famous. I don't have to be anything except a watcher at this point. And a guide. I am guiding a lot of people, and I still give readings to people, and I'm still writing, and I have a book coming out, I hope, next year. It's finished. My agent, a new agent, has been plunked into my lap and loves it, and so that should do. And then
And what is the title? Do you have a title yet?
I do have a title. The title is The Wonder and Happiness of Old Age.
Oh.
There's to Eleanor. And it comes from my niece, great niece, I don't know, cousin, I don't even know what she is, my aunt's granddaughter. And we were having a cup of espresso in a cafe in Paris. And she turned to me and she said, I'm 59. I'm going to be 60 in another few months. Tell me what it's like to be. And then she stopped because she didn't want to use the word old. In your 60s, you won't even notice your 60s. But then I came home and I started thinking, well, how is it different being old? What is it like to be old? And why are we so afraid of being old?
Great.
I'm not actually afraid of being old. We're afraid of the pain that we think accompanies old age. But that doesn't have to happen.
Wonderful. Well, I love that you're still sharing your wisdom with all of us. I went and I looked up sophyburnham.com and it doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't.
Well, I brought up like a page that wasn't there. Is that did I type it wrong perhaps?
No, it should be sophyburnham.com.
Okay. I'll have to, isn't that interesting? All right, good.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, yeah. I'll go check that out.
Check that out. And by the time this airs, I'm sure it'll be fixed. Yes.
Great fun. I really love to talk about these things.
Oh, I could talk about it forever. Ask my husband.
Well, what happens is our energy gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh,
yes, definitely. Well, you have just a lovely energy, so much wisdom to share. And I'm so grateful that you came onto the scene when you did and answered a prayer. What a great story that I didn't know about the origins of how the book finally became published. But again, everything in divine timing. And it was just divine talking with you. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And we will continue to have beautiful guests like Sophy each week and lots of things going on. I invite you to check out my website under featured events where we can meet in person or online and also find out about future guests. You go out and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.